So with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, we're hitting theaters this weekend and already doing way better than what many people were expecting at the box office. I thought it'd be the perfect time to rank all of the Spider-Man movies and all of the spin-offs right now. Since 2001, Sony has primarily been releasing and putting out high-quality Spider-Man movies and Spider-Man spin-offs. And since 2001, there have been a total of 10 Spider-Man films that are primarily Spider-Man films and 3 spin-off movies in the Venom duology and Morbius. And later this year, obviously, we're getting Kraven the Hunter, and early next year, we're getting Madam Web, El Muerto probably, and Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse. Now, to give you some background, I'm a huge fan of this franchise. This is one of my favorite movie franchises of all time. I think Spider-Man is easily a top 3 favorite comic book character of all time for me. And I think that this is arguably the most consistent comic book movie franchise out there, where there are only a couple movies that I would say are bad. Everything else I think is at least enjoyable or good. So if you see some of your favorite movies lower down, that's not me shitting on them. That's me just saying they're still probably good, but there are some movies that I genuinely think are some of the greatest comic movies ever made at the top. So with all that being said, starting off at the bottom at number 13 is the newest spin-off that was released last year, Morbius. Now, this is not an absolute train wreck of a film, like many people try to make it out to be. Some people try and make it out to be a just unwatchable, and it's not. There are some moments where I actually think the visual effects are pretty decent, even though this film was supposedly made for under $100 million, and the shots are in focus. Everything involving that is good. It's the story here that it sucks. It jumps from plot point to plot point rapidly without any breathing room, and with only a runtime of, I'm pretty sure, under an hour and 50 minutes. There's no time to breathe. There's no time to develop anything. Morbius feels just completely underdeveloped. And this is one of those movies that feels the most out, and there are a couple movies on this list that have had this problem, that feels most like it had studio interference, where it felt like the guy who directed the Zombieland movies and the first Venom film directed this and had a vision of like a horror movie, of more of a darker tone, blood, and a character study, and it felt like a bunch of studio executives just came in and changed that and made it into a really bad and forgettable setup movie for stuff that we may never see in this franchise. So this isn't an absolutely unwatchable film. It's just really bad and it's forgettable. So it comes in at number 13. At number 12 is Venom 2018, the first Venom. Now, it seems like there's a lot of fans of this film. Sadly, I'm not one of them. I've been trying to like this film ever since it came out in 2018. I was in middle school at the time, and I was actually really excited, and I went to go see it. And while I do think Tom Hardy is great in the role of Eddie Brock, he does something about, and their chemistry is great, just something about it doesn't feel right. I think the film is way too long in segments and then way too short in others. Like the opening 5 minutes or so when the symbiotes crash and there's that car crash and that person gets out of the car and their bones are like snapping back into place. It's kind of like a horror movie shot. I was like, oh, okay, this is what it's going to be like. And so I was really intrigued. And then from there, you just get into like 45 minutes of just the most painfully boring stuff with Eddie going around trying to get news stories, ruining his life, ruining his essentially the love of his life's life. And just ruining everything. Then he gets the symbiote, and things don't really start happening until like the 50-minute mark to an hour. And you don't see Venom, I'm pretty sure, until 60 minutes into the film in his actual form. You see the symbiote come out of Eddie's arm and like grab people and stuff. And that fight is pretty decent, but it's just forgettable. And so this is a film that by no means is an absolutely awful film, but I think it's over-rushed in certain scenes and then over-slow in other scenes. Like, the last 20 minutes just feel like they're just running through plot points. And I think if this film was even 20 minutes longer, an hour and 50, or an hour or 2 hours, I think that we would have been, without end credits, I think we could have been looking at a pretty solid film here. But it's all right. I don't enjoy it, but it comes down here at number 12. Just above that is Venom Let There Be Carnage. Now, I don't have much to say about this film. It's okay. From here on up, we're at like the 2.75 and up range. This movie is not bad or terrible. It's just okay. I watched this film knowing that it was probably going to be more of the same, and it's a little better. I think that the fact that we already have the relationship built with Venom and Eddie works much better in this one than it does in the previous one. And I think that the action scenes are a lot more fun here. Carnage, while not being the best villain and being a little underwhelming, is a much better villain. My main problem here is it's just nothing is developed because you only have a runtime that's under 100 minutes, and without end credits, it's under 85 minutes. Nothing feels developed, and so it's fine if someone were to watch it with me, I wouldn't hate it, but I wouldn't go out of my way to watch it. Now, from here on up, all of these movies I really enjoy. And so kicking off the top 10 is Spider-Man Far From Home. Now, I've always said I think that this is a really nice end to Phase 3, where you kind of get a side to Peter's trauma, where he's missed so much of his life, and he regrets that he didn't get to spend 5 more years with Tony Stark, and how everyone has looked at him for wanting to be the new Tony Stark. And I think that character exploration is really cool. And I think it works better every time I rewatch it. And it's fun to watch this film after Endgame and after all these stakes and heart-pounding emotions. You kind of get to this film, it's a bit of a breather. From there, I think that the technology here is really cool, and I like the addition of Nick Fury. And I do really enjoy Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio. I actually think they modernized him in a good way. But I think that his plan doesn't make any sense. Like, when he says he wants to become the greatest superhero in the world, what happens when they actually need help and they call for him and he can't do anything? Then they all die, or they figure it out, and then he goes to jail and gets in trouble. So I've always found that to be a rough plot line. And then the setup of Tony giving this teenager that's been dead for 5 years glasses that could kill people doesn't make much sense. But apart from that, it's a fun movie. It's a 3.5 out of 5. I enjoy it. So number 10, Spider-Man Far From Home. At number 9 is SpiderMan 3, the conclusion to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. Now, this is going to be a little bit controversial, and the film that's above this is also going to be a little controversial. Really, this entire list is going to be a little controversial. I've never thought this film was a bad film. I've always enjoyed it. Now, is it a great film? No. Does it have flaws? Absolutely. And does the third act suck ass? Absolutely. I think that when you're talking about the third act, I think is down near Venom Let There Be Carnage levels. I don't think the third act is very good, but the rest of the film is. This was a film that I didn't see for many years, and then when I finally did, I was walking into it essentially expecting the worst, because I just heard so many terrible things about it for so long, that the fact that when I saw it, I actually enjoyed it, I've never thought, it surprised me. And so I love the character work here, most of it at least. I think that The Sandman is actually a really good villain, and that's one of my favorite Spider-Man villains. I think that most of the fights are cool. The finale looks a little spotty in spots, but it's 2007 CGI. What are you going to do? And I actually like the relationship between Harry and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man in this film. Now, I think the third act goes off the rails when Venom attaches himself to Eddie. But apart from that, the first 100 minutes of the movie, I think, is really good. And so, yeah, it's a 3.5-star film, but I actually really enjoy it. And so, this has been a film that I've never gotten the hate for. Another film that I have never understood the hate for is Amazing Spider-Man 2. This is a film that, once again, I did not see when it first came out, because I just heard about how bad it was. And then when I saw it, I really liked this movie, to the point where there are some parts of this film where I like on the same level as The Amazing Spider-Man. I think that the chemistry between Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone is better in this film than it was in the first film, and he was on fire in the last film. I think that most of the action is incredible. The Spider-Man swinging is fantastic. I'm an actual fan of the Hans Zimmer score. Not the electro songs, but the actual score of Spider-Man. And this film has fantastic emotion of there's dread, of feeling dread throughout the film and knowing something is wrong. And I like Dane DeHaan in the role of New Goblin. I don't think he's as good as he could have been, but I like him in the role. Where this film gets taken down by about 0.5 star is, I think that it should have been a little longer. And when all the villains start coming together, like Electro leaves the plot for a while and then comes back, it's just kind of weird. But apart from that, I genuinely think that this is a movie that just gets overhated. And it's not a masterpiece, but it's a good movie. It's 3.75 out of 5. I'd say buy it. So, number 8, Amazing Spider-Man 2. At number 7 is SpiderMan Homecoming. Now, from here on up, these movies are all great, and I have a good time with all of these films. SpiderMan Homecoming is a great, and I'm not the first person to say this, a great John Hughes style MCU Spider-Man film. And I actually think that this was the right way to go. I think if you tried to do another origin story or do another kind of Spider-Man film, I think people would be bored, because we've seen that so many times before. And so I actually think it was the right move to make this more stand on its own. I think that Tom Holland embodies this role. He's great. And the villain of the Vulture is arguably a top 3 villain in the Spider-Man universe and this franchise. He's incredible. And obviously I think that it is a little bit of Iron Man Jr. And I don't like how he has so much technology and how you don't feel like it's necessarily a Spider-Man movie because it almost has nothing to do with New York. But I actually I like parts of that, and I think that there's some great moments in here, and I love the Washington building escape where he's gonna jump over the helicopter and crash in and stop and get them out. I like that scene, so I like this movie. It could have been better, but I really like it. So at number 7, Spider-Man Homecoming. Just above that is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Now, I'm already going to get flamed for this because I don't have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse in my top 5, or at my number 3, or in my top 2, or at number 1. Listen, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is a very good movie. It's a 4.25 movie. I think it's a great film. I think that this is arguably one of the best told Spider-Man stories, where this feels like a Spider-Man film. I would argue this is the funniest Spider-Man film. Maybe a couple of Tom Holland films, maybe. But this movie's hilarious, especially Spider-Pig and Spider-Noir. Nick Cage is perfect. I think the voice cast is great here. And really, obviously the animation is fantastic. I mean, it's great. really the only thing that holds this film back is, while I do think that this is a great Spider-Man story, it feels like we've seen it all before. So, the person that's really attached to our Spider-Person dies. Oh no. And then they gotta stop, and then they gotta find who they are. It feels very familiar. But it's surrounded by great characters, two fantastic arcs from Miles and then Peter B. Parker, especially that pays off really well at the end. So this is a very good movie. It's a 4.25 out of 5 for me. So it comes in number here at 6. At number 5 is Spider-Man 2. I'm sorry. This movie is a damn near 5 out of 5 movie for me. I told you I love this franchise. For the next 5, from 5 to 3, everything here is like I could go back and forth. But getting back to Spider-Man 2, I think that this movie is brilliant. Dr. Octopus is one of, if not the best Spider-Man villain in this whole universe. He's played to perfection by Alfred Molina. I genuinely think Alfred Molina is one of the few people that should have been nominated for an Academy Award for comic book film. And the way he just embodies this role, the way he plays that division of being mad but also trying to stay sane. I think that Tobey Maguire is much better in this film. I mean, I'm not saying he's bad in the first film, but I do think he shows a little more maturity in this film, I would argue, but I still love him in the first film. And the action sequences in this film are great. I mean, the train sequence is a top 10, maybe top 5 greatest action sequences in a comic book movie ever. The only negative I have is the side plot of him losing his powers. And it adds to that nice moment where he saves that little girl out of the apartment building, but it doesn't add much. So I love this movie. It's almost perfect. And I understand why many people call it the greatest comic book movie of all time. So number 5, Spider-Man 2. At number 4 is SpiderMan No Way Home. This is one of the most important movies of all time for me. When this movie came out, I was in a point in my life where I was kind of losing a lot of faith in movies. 2020 was a really rough year for a lot of us, and it was just a year where we had no movies coming out. And then 2021 is one of the worst years for movies ever, because there were a few really good movies, but then everything else was just so mediocre. And so this was a movie where it came out and I was really worried, because I had been spending a year probably, researching this movie, looking at this movie, just building hype. And it was very possible that it just let me down. So I didn't look at the reviews walking into it, because I knew if it was 70% Rotten Tomatoes, that meant Spider-Man didn't show up. And this movie just gave me one of the coolest rides I've ever had in a movie theater, where it showed me what I love about Spider-Man. And I remember that when they came up on screen, I was literally shaking because I was so excited. And to me, this is one of the most important movies of all time. It brought my love back for movies at the time, and I can't thank it enough. But it's not perfect. I do think that the setup for the film is a little odd. It doesn't make a ton of sense. But I can't complain about it too much, because it gave me everything that I could have wanted, everything I could have asked for. And something that, if you had told me a decade ago, or when we got Tom Holland as our new Spider-Man, that this would where it was lead, I wouldn't believe you, but I'm glad it did. And so it's very important to me, and it is sitting here very comfortably at number 4. Number 3 is the new kid on the block, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Now, I'm not going to talk much about this film because I've already got a review out for it. I posted it yesterday. Please go watch it. And I loved this movie. I said in my video, I think that this is arguably the best objective comic book movie we've seen since Logan. and Logan is my favorite comic book movie of all time. I think that this story is fantastic, character work is fantastic, animation is the best animation we've ever seen, and it makes sense why this film is already exceeding box office expectations, where it was projected to make 80 to 90 million, and now it could make 115 million this weekend, because it's so damn good. I genuinely think that this is one of the greatest movies ever made. But I cannot say it is without seeing part 2. And this is an incomplete story. If I was doing it, reviewing it on my own, this would be a 4, close to a 5-star, maybe even a 5-star. This might be my number 1 or number 2. And it would probably be my favorite movie of the year. But I'm looking on an objective level. We have not got the full story, and it's very possible they drop the ball. So I cannot put it any higher. I love this movie, but I can't put it any higher because I don't want to put myself in front of the horse. So I love this movie, and it's sitting here at number 3. My runner-up is, in my opinion, the most underrated comic book movie of all time, and that is The Amazing Spider-Man. God damn, I love this movie. This was, once again, a movie that I heard for so many years about how just mediocre it was. And I watched it, and god damn, I love this movie. I mean, to me, this introduces the best Spider-Man. I think Andrew Garfield is the best Spider-Man. He embodies that character perfectly, where he embodies the nerdy aspects of it, where he's smart, he wants to do a lot with science, he wants to learn, he's always interesting, he's always interested in other things, but he's also confident, and he's willing to stand up to people. Like that scene when he gets beaten up by Flash in front of everyone, like he's just doing his hardest. And then he shows so much emotion when Uncle Ben dies. That scene is just heartbreaking. The scene when he's watching Captain Stacy die is heartbreaking. I love this movie. I think that the chemistry between Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield is on fire. I think that this has a fantastic villain. I think that Dr. Carnage is severely underrated in this film. People say he's a Green Goblin ripoff. He's not. He's so different, and he's on a whole nother level in certain aspects. And I can you can understand where he's coming from. And to me, this film, it's brilliant. I don't understand the hate this film gets as people saying it's just a copy of the original. It's not. It is similar, but it takes liberties. And I think that this is the best Aunt May. I really do. And so I can't defend this film anymore. People have come around on it. And this film, every time I rewatch it, I love it even more. But it also makes me even madder that we never got Amazing Spider-Man 3. So I can't rave about this movie anymore. I love it. Number 2, Amazing Spider-Man. But that leaves my number 1, and that is the original Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. This movie is a top 5 comic book movie of all time for me. This was the first comic book movie I ever saw. I remember I was 4, I think, and I was sitting down, and I loved comics at the time, and I loved superheroes, and I found out that there was a movie called Spider-Man. And me and my dad watched it, and I tell you, I don't, like, this and the original Star Wars, I watched on loop. And I loved this movie. As a kid, for years, this was my favorite movie. This and Star Wars. And so, I think this film's fantastic. And I love this movie so much, I didn't even know that there were other Spider-Man movies until I was like 9. And I was like, wait a minute, what? There's other ones? I gotta watch these. I genuinely think that this film's perfect. There is nothing that you could change in this film. I think Tobey Maguire is perfect in the role. I think that how episodic it is actually helps the story. That way we get to learn more about Peter Parker and learn more about the city, while also fleshing out the Green Goblin, who is also maybe the greatest Spider-Man villain of all time. I think that this movie is perfect. It is in my top 25 movies of all time. I think that I adore this movie. And there is no one that will ever convince me, unless Beyond the Spider-Verse is as good as Across, there will never be another Spider-Man movie that beats this one. So that is my number one. And it is not even close. My favorite Spider-Man movie of all time is the original Spider-Man. Well, that was the video. Thank you for watching my ranking of the Spider-Man movies. A lot of controversial opinions in there, but please be nice. Let me know your ranking down below in the comments. And as always, I'll see you later. I will try and get more Spider-Man content out this weekend, but if not, at least you got this. Bye.